Ian Thorpe, without doubt, one of Australia's greatest swimmers, 5 Olympic gold, world champion, youngest member of the Olympic team, and an extraordinary life. An attempted comeback for the London Olympics, that's all been well documented. What hasn't been documented, and rarely is with a sportsman, is the life behind, the public life. Ian Thorpe, I think, bravely has written that in his book, This Is Me, Ian Thorpe, the autobiography, and not bravely for the obvious reason. Yes, he does in the book talk about battling depression, about suicidal thoughts, about abusing alcohol and this sort of things, but he does more than that. In this, that's the obvious stuff. In this book, he talks about his sexuality and everything people would pay attention to, but he shows his vulnerability, I think, because it's a very honest book. Ian Thorpe, good morning.
Good morning.
Do you feel you've exposed yourself a bit in this book?
Oh, absolutely. This wasn't an easy process to do, but I made a decision. If I was going to do this, you have two choices. You either write completely honestly or you lie through your teeth. And I went with the former, and I had the option of being able to pull back. I never thought the chapter on depression I would include. I thought I'd write it for myself, put it away under lock and key. And I realised in writing it, because of the rest of the book and the rest of the content, it was an underlying factor in so many of the other parts and the other chapters in the book that it needed to be included. And also because I think, it's more of a chapter for everyone else, that, people can benefit from having an understanding of this, for their own lives if they're struggling.
Well, you're such a private person, that comes through in the book. Why invite this in? The depression thing I understand, and that's a very powerful thing to do for people who suffer it. But why expose so much else of yourself?
I didn't intend to.
Really?
And it was a process where I thought this book would have been about returning to swimming, talking about swimming, qualifying and hopefully qualifying for the Olympics, the process it takes to get back, and then hopefully being successful at the Olympics. And in the lead up to all of that, this is the introduction would have all remained the same with a different ending. But in the process of writing this, I realised that there's a lot more that's gone on in my life, and I just started to let it out. I'm very clear about the person that I am. I don't often share it with people outside my family and my close friends. And it's not that I have a problem with it, but I've always put up a shield to try and protect myself.
But and this almost hurt me in the book, that you hadn't shared your issues of depression with your family, but when you wrote in the book you knew you would have to before the book was published. If I was your parent, I'd be really hurt by that. Were they?
Yeah. And look, this is something that children go through, that you always try and please your parents. And mind you, I was also embarrassed about the fact that I had depression, and I also don't think, at many times in the past, I actually had it under control, that I could talk about it. And so when I told them, the hurtful part was that I hadn't told them. Of course. My sister as well, because they said, we could have helped you. And I said, I know that, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to share this because I thought, I'll get over this, I'll be all right. And I knew that they would have been able to help, but part of depression is being completely irrational.
Yeah, true. And just judging on the book, your father, at least superficially, is a pretty rough, tough sort of don't show your feelings sort of man. How did he cope with it?
Yeah, really well. My father's kind of traditional father, like most kids in Australia, kind of was the disciplinarian and whatnot. But he has a soft side as well. And
most of us do.
Yeah, I know. It's all a fake, right? I've seen him with his grandchildren now, and I saw him with my nephew lying on his chest. They were both asleep. And I said to my mum, "Was he like that with me when I was a kid?" And she said, "No."
Are you a sad person?
Sad? No. I'm not a sad person.
Sometimes in the book you seem sad, not because of depression, that's another issue, but a bit sad about the way your life has been and the pressures on you.
Look, there's been times that it's been difficult, and I found a loneliness in my life But it's not a sadness, because the only thing that I can say about it is having, all of these things that, should make you very happy and being quite unfulfilled by it. I think this links to the depression side. But it has at times been a very lonely existence where I've questioned a lot about, what would have happened if I, had stayed at school? Would I have taken a different path? What would happen if I, hadn't started swimming? Where would I be? Would I end up in the same place? And I think these are questions that all of us ask ourselves at different points in our lives. And it's something that, I'm curious of what would have happened.
You talk in the book about abusing alcohol, about suicidal thoughts. Are you through all that now? Are you through the depression now? I mean, sometimes people, depression can return. Do you think you're through it?
Look, in terms of depression, I'm still dealing with it. In terms of, drinking too much, I'm through that. I realised it's a stupid thing to do, but when you're in that space, it makes sense for some reason. Then you wake up the next day, you've got a hangover, and you feel worse, and then you repeat it. And so you go, what am I doing? And you stop. So, I'll have a drink if I'm with friends, and that's it. In terms of suicidal thoughts, I haven't been in that place for a long time.
How dangerous was it for you, do you think?
It was dangerous. It was when you actually start to think that it is a rational decision to kill yourself, you realise that this is serious and you need help. And when you can't get that thought out of your head, no matter what you try and do to dismiss it, you need to get help. And for me, it's getting through a night. If I can wake up the next day, it's better. But you sometimes have to make that call to a healthcare provider to be able to get help.
You're using the present tense. Do you still have depressive episodes now?
Yeah, I do. But I manage it a lot better than I ever have before. I do take medication. I'm on a lower dose than I had been previously, which I'm happy about.
But this is a great message, isn't it? Which people don't understand. It's treatable.
Yeah, it is. And I look at it as an illness. And it was explained to me in this way that it's an illness that sometimes it pops up where it's a bit worse, and so you have to do a little bit more to knock it back down. But also for people to know, it gets better, and you still can do everything. And it's the same as any other illness that someone may have that just prevents them from getting them. It's just an extra hurdle that you may have to jump over.